So, hello guys, this is Dominik from 𝒂𝒓𝒏, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of 𝒂𝒓𝒏 Interviews. Today I have a special guest here again, and the first time for me to interview one of my colleagues. His name is Haresh Bajaj, and he is the head of product growth at Pleo. And Haresh, for you, I'm always starting with this little introduction for the listeners. So I would like to hand over to you and give you the possibility to introduce yourself.
Great, Dominik. Really happy to be interviewed. I think it's always fun to speak to you. I've always really enjoyed. So my pleasure to be here. Quick intro about myself. Grew up in a small town in India, not very far from Mumbai. These are obviously relative terms. When I say small town, it's got like 6 million people. And when I say very close to Mumbai, it's like a 10-hour train ride. Started my professional journey working for a bank in London. I was there for 5 years, did multiple things, investment banking, corporate banking, then went into payments. Through that, moved to Berlin to help scale up Klarna, where I led different teams and different initiatives, mostly on the B2B side for roughly just over 3 years. And then joined this amazing rocket ship that we have called Pleo, incidentally on the day of Series C announcement. So that's been fun so far. I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit about what I do at Pleo as well. But maybe beyond work, I think I love yoga, as you know. I love biking. I love playing tennis. I'm really into Formula One. Love food, but not cooking, which is two different things. And I think maybe touching a little bit on the philosophical side, and this is where probably yoga comes in. I really believe in the concept of karma and dharma. So karma is like your own effort, and dharma is what happens around you with no control. So I've really believed in that philosophy where you put your effort and everything that you achieve is only 50% you and 50% is your dharma. So when you do end up achieving good things, again, it's not you because you had like half the part to play. But again, when good things don't happen in your life, again, it's not yours either. So you can't beat yourself up too much. So that's the philosophy that I've like really strongly believed in. So just wanted to share that as part of my intro as well.
That's great. It's super interesting because I'm not that religious, right? So I grew up in Germany, and my parents were Christians, but I feel like also when I heard a lot of stuff about Buddhism, for example, I really felt like it's something I can relate to. And I think also that one, like with karma, I really like it.
Yes. So for me, I think I'm not religious. Like I grew up in a Hindu family, but I'm mostly an agnostic rather. Like I'm very happy for people to preach and follow whatever they prefer. I'm more on the spiritual side. I believe in yoga and I believe a lot in stoicism as well. So those are some of the philosophies that essentially guide my way of life.
That's nice. Let's come back to this a little bit later and let's talk about you as a person in your career first, and maybe a little bit because people maybe don't know what is head of product growth actually doing at Pleo. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, or not even head, you are the VP product growth. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay.
So
the same thing.
Yeah. So what are you actually doing at Pleo? Maybe you can tell the people a little bit about your actually role at Pleo.
Yeah, 100%. So I think titles don't mean a lot to me, or I think also in Pleo anymore, because we've done like a bit of a organizational restructure. Like previously used to be organized in functions. So there used to be a sales team, there used to be a marketing team, a product team, engineering, so on and so forth. I think we have dismantled all of that with the main principle that we want to build teams around clear customer problems. So then it should not matter if it's a sales job or a product job. You have clear customer problems that you want to solve, and then you organize your teams around that. And then the other principle that we applied in reorganizing ourselves was to push autonomy down to the teams. Team is the most important unit, and teams then roll up into what we call it as domain, which is a proxy for a business unit. But teams should be empowered to make their own decisions. They are accountable for the end-to-end success of the outcome. And with that, I think you push a lot faster decision making, that not everything needs to roll up to a senior person, right? So with that, my title of a VP for product growth actually doesn't mean anything. What I think everyone cares about is what part are you playing at a team or a domain level. So what I do is I manage 2 domains. Domain, again, like I said, is a proxy for a business unit. So the first one I manage is called market expansion, where we have a huge ambition to go into 15 new European countries in the next 15 months. So it's like a very rapid growth, but also beyond that, we want to scale Pleo beyond Europe to go into other continents. And I think, Dominic, obviously, in the last 4 months or so, we have already opened 5 new markets.
Yeah, in like impressive work.
They're in a bit of a soft launch phase, but I think before we started this, we were in 6 markets, and right now we're already in 11. So we've already doubled the pre-COVID numbers, so that's quite exciting. The second domain that I manage is called SMB acquisition and growth. So it's built around an SMB customer, and we own the entire life cycle for an SMB. SMB, it's an arbitrary definition that we have taken, is any company which is less than 50 employees, and we own the entire life cycle, right from trying to create the demand out in the wild, wild west, trying to get prospects into our ecosystem, then educating and selling it to them if Pleo is the right thing. And once they are convinced, then we guide them and we onboard them. And once they're onboarded, we then work with them to ensure that they are nurtured and they get the best out of the Pleo product. So they are using different aspects of Pleo, which makes sense according to their needs. And we also help them grow, right? So it's the end-to-end life cycle. And just for context, I think roughly 70% of Pleo's revenue comes from this segment. So in a way, the way I describe it to my teams is, this is our bread and butter, and this is a license we have to play, basically. So those are the 2 things I run. I think the role is more or less like a general manager. So I've like a leadership team, and then underneath that, there are different teams, all kind of like championing the same vision that I talked about.
Have you heard about the pizza rule from Jeff Bezos?
100%. I love that. And that's how I build my teams. Every team which could not be fed by more than 2 pizzas, you have a wrong setup.
Yeah, I just heard about it recently when I talked to the head of sales from 𝒂𝒓𝒏. It was a really nice chat I had with her, and she told me about it. And I actually recognized we are doing this at Pleo, but I never heard about the rule before, so that was quite funny.
But that's the principle that we have applied. Like when we reorganized, we said that at the team level, it cannot be more than like, I think, anywhere between 4 to 10 people, right? Like there could be exceptions, but let's limit those exceptions because the team needs to be like super coherent.
Yeah, and I also feel like if you have Zoom calls, and I know every one of us is knowing this and experienced this in the past, if you have more than 10 people in a Zoom call, like actually nobody feels responsible to say anything, right? So
correct.
It's like a lot of like, there are only like 1 or 2 people making jokes, and the rest just like on mute and maybe not even have all the cameras on. So yeah, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Haresh, you also said like in the past months, we launched several new markets, and I think that's impressive work. I already mentioned. I think it's super nice what you guys did there, and I'm really excited about what's ahead of us. But I think for most people listening to the podcast right now, they think like, wow, that's interesting. What's the challenges you're experiencing, like when you're launching so many countries in this short time period?
So I think 2 or 3 maybe big challenges that we face or are facing. I think when we say we're going to launch 15 markets in 15 months, that also means we're going to set up 15 different teams in 15 months, right? So imagine when we were preparing for Netherlands, you also needed to have at least a small team built kind of like ready to take up the work, right? So I think hiring was a big challenge, especially I think if you think about so many markets where Pleo is completely unknown, so with like no brand presence. So I think doing a lot of, sourcing ourselves, so like in my leadership team, but also I think beyond our domain, I think we leverage so like network of so many good people within Pleo and outside Pleo, like who have, let's say, some presence in, let's say, France or Netherlands, right? Because otherwise, if people don't know who you are, what you're capable of, then I think everything is just fluffy. Everything is just words, right? So you need people care about connections. People care about, okay, I trust this person's word of mouth. I'm going to like latch onto that, especially I think when it comes to changing jobs. So I think that was a big challenge, both in terms of like setting the teams up, hiring, but also then you have to quickly set them up to be high performing team, right? Because there's almost like no time to start the work and essentially like enter a market. One of the things that we invested off the back of that was that we're not just going to like hack our way to create like or enter new markets. We're going to invest heavily in what we call it as a playbook, which is basically a muscle that we create that the learnings that we get, we should be able to repeat those playbooks, right? So I think you probably know this, that early on, we were probably taking 2.5 months to go from start to essentially entering a market. Recently, we entered Belgium from 0 to 1 in 6 weeks. And for me, I think that's the power of a playbook, right? So that was one big challenge. Secondly, I think we all are super ambitious. We all are, in a way, insecure overachievers. And we want everything to be perfect, right? So getting the team to shed that away and be like, guys, let's not care about perfection. Let's figure out what absolutely needs to be in place on the critical part. So learning to live with imperfections, because over time, it's your customers who are going to tell you if the thing that you have built is actually good or not, right? Rather than like trying to build the perfect thing before you launch out there, I think was a big challenge. I think it was more internally getting people into that mindset that, hey, you know what? It is okay to put something which is, again, you still have to keep it at an acceptable minimum level. It can't be really bad, right? You can't just like push anything over the fence and be like, let's see what happens, right? So the agreement was more on what is the minimal accepted quality of offering and the experience, beyond which let's let the customers kind of guide us, right? Because the cultural nuances and the behaviors and the regulations are going to be so different between countries that you can't sit in your room in your Zoom calls trying to perfect everything, right? So that was the second big challenge, which I think we're doing okay now. And the third challenge, which I think we're starting to get into, is I think we've figured out it's easy actually to enter a market. Maybe because we have done it like so often now that we are like, okay, we know how this is going to be done. What is really difficult, or at least we are learning right now, is how do you steady it? How do you mature it? How do you then carry even a revenue target, right? Because you're not just like putting Pleo in like 15 markets, not caring about if it's a sustainable business or not, right? So that's the new muscle that we are learning to build. Like, because like I also said, I think it's easy to enter a market. I think it was also somewhat easy to attract customers on an offering, especially if the cultural nuances are somewhat similar. Are we able to retain them? Are we able to grow the customers that are coming in, right? And are we able to create a sustainable business? I think that's the third challenge that we are probably going through right now.
Super interesting. I think what I'm remembering from one of our first conversations we had is, of course, you told me a little about your previous role at Klarna. And I remember you told me you were one of, I think, the first 10 people working in Germany at Klarna in this segment. And you grow within 3 years over 300, 400, 500. Is this correct?
So small correction. I think I was in the first, 40, 50 people in the Berlin office. And then I think in 3 years, it grew to like maybe 600, 700 people.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that's what I see right now at Pleo, like happening one more time. And like, what's your secret? Like, how do you find these companies? And what do you think, like I think many people looking for jobs like we have, right? They're looking for companies like this, fast scaling companies, and think like, I want to have this rocket ship. But do you think, like, can people like where do they find these companies? And do you think is there a pattern for you?
I don't think so. Like, I enjoy working in a smaller startup or a scale up which is going through a bit of a growth journey. I think I enjoy the chaos. I think one of the skills, I think maybe selfishly, I think I have is I can create good business judgment, and I can drive the teams in the face of a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty. I think that's something that I'm like more or less okay with. I think the way Klarna happened, I think it goes back to my little philosophy that I told you, right? Like, you take care of your karma and the dharma will take care of you, more or less. I think I used to work for a large bank in the UK, Barclays, and this was 2017, 2018 roughly, when Klarna had reached out. And to be very honest, I had not heard of Klarna. Not a lot of people around us had heard of Klarna at that point. They had just set up an office in Berlin. And I was actually going to go to the US to do my master's. I had worked really hard to get an admission into one of the good colleges. And I was set. And I remember having this conversation with the recruiter. I'm like, look, I think I've made up my mind. I'm going. There's no point in having a conversation. But then he was like, look, there's no harm in having a conversation. So we're like, okay, let's do that. So we spoke with him and the team a few times. And I flew to Stockholm, met with the VP of product, VP of engineering, the CPO, the CTO. I think one thing that stood out was how humble, but also equally ambitious those folks were, and the conversations were. I'm like, oh, I could see I would love to work with them, even though I don't really understand what they do or where is this company going. They'd just become a unicorn as well. I think they'd raised some funding, they'd become valued at 1.7 billion. So they were just maybe starting to become something. And for me, I was like, you know what? I can take a gamble, because if I don't take a gamble now, I will look back at it and be like, oh, should have done it, right? So try to live my life also with this aspect that if I look back, can I see that I have had no regrets, right? So Klarna happened like that. I made the move. I think they were, like I said, they'd opened the office in Berlin. They had 30, 40 people, and it felt like, oh, it's going to be a small, cozy office. And I loved those setups where I can build a small community as well. Pleo happened very similar. Olav, who is our CPO, he had reached out. I actually didn't know him. He had reached out through a common friend. I didn't know about Pleo, to be very honest. And I think we spoke from November till I think March, in across 4 months when I finally made the decision. I remember meeting Torben and Jeppe and Arun at some point for a walk in Berlin. And I think I was undecided because previously we were talking about a payments role, then a credit role, then this undecided growth role. And I think somehow I was fixating on what will I actually do. Then just reflecting that I'm at a similar crossroad as I was 3 years ago with Klarna. And I just decided to take a plunge because there were certain value and principle aspects that stood out. Again, I think in all these conversations, all these people stood out as, again, obviously ambitious, but super humble. And the one thing that appealed to me like this was how open and intently they listened to what I had to add, what I had to bring. And I felt like if I were to join, I could have a real say in the direction of the organization, right? And I felt, okay, I would love to do that. And I would also love to work with people that I can get along well with, right? So again, I made a decision, made a bit of a leap of faith, and then joined when we closed the Series C round, which was serendipity or dharma, as at least I like to call it. And I think you probably remember the first 6 to 8 weeks, I was kind of floating, not really knowing what my role is and what does product growth actually mean for a B2B company. But then along the way, we figured it out. And for me, I think that's the aspect that I enjoy, that can I work through my intuitions a little bit, because I think there's going to be no exact science in trying to figure out which is going to be the next Klarna or which is going to be the next Stripe, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of gut involved, and there's a lot of will I actually enjoy working with these people? Will I want to be one of them one day, right? And if I don't get a clear answer, then I think it's probably no.
Yeah. I think what's super important, what you just mentioned, is a lot of people struggling because they are looking in the future, right? Mm-hmm. Chasing dreams and not really enjoying the process. I think that's what I've learned in the past few years, that everything is about enjoying the process. And of course you should having goals and stuff like this. But it's also what I like about the Karma Dharma process. I think it's that you can take responsibility, right, about what you're doing, and you can, you give 100%, but in the end, still there's a part you cannot influence, right? So, and I think to not getting the imposter syndrome, right? I think yes. Also people a lot of talking about the imposter syndrome on LinkedIn. What are you actually doing to stay happy in what you're doing and not getting burned out at work? Because I know you're really hard working. Sometimes we have to bring you lunch because you're also jumping.
Which I really appreciate, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. But I think that's also super important, right? People who were working a lot. What are you doing for yourself and to stay fit and healthy also in the brain, right? And in your mind.
So I think before I go into that, and I have like a couple of points to add, but I think just reflecting on your previous question as well, I think I have another philosophy that if I may, I can maybe just add that.
Sure.
Is this concept, so I have a word which I really like. It's a Sanskrit word again. It's called drishti. It doesn't exactly translate to a clear word in English, but it more or less means focus. But when you do yoga, there are a lot of balancing poses where I think the instructor will ask you to focus on a particular point. But the whole concept of drishti is that you cannot focus on it too hard, because if you do, then you're still going to fall. And if you don't put effort to focus on that, you still fall. So the whole point I'm making with that is, if I was really knee deep focused with the bank I was working with, I would have never had maybe even the drishti to have the head up and respond to Klarna, or similarly with Pleo, right? So I think it's very important to focus on certain things, but not lose touch of what's happening in your surrounding. And I think that's what I've always done. And maybe just coming to your question, I think it's somewhat related. For me, I think that notion in itself drives a lot of happiness. Like, I love to focus. I love to go deep into topics. But my personal happiness comes a lot from, if I'm learning, first of all, if I'm enjoying with the people that I work with. Like, you have seen me in the office, right? Like, I really enjoy being in the office. I really enjoy working with people around me. And for me, I think that single-handedly is the biggest driver of my happiness. That if I don't get along well with people who work with me, around me in different offices, that's why I'm also traveling so often. But I want to have the vibe of people in different offices. Then when it comes to maybe my mental health and my physical health, like I said, I think I stay very active. I never compromise on those things. And I built my schedule around those. So I have blocks. I think you may have seen it. Like, I will go and do yoga and then come back and work. I'll go for like a bike ride and then come back. I play a lot of paddle tennis, like I said. I stay healthy. I stay active. I will ensure that I like just eat and drink well, because I know that the journey that we all are on is a marathon, basically. But at the end of the day, the joy, I think, comes from people around you. And if I didn't have that, then I think it's very easy to fall in maybe bad patterns. I think everything that I'm saying I do is because I'm mentally in a happy state with people around me, and I'm enjoying the work I'm doing. I'm learning. It pushes me into a lot of uncomfortable spots. And I know a huge part of growth comes from being in uncomfortable situations, both, I think, sometimes mentally and physically. But if you cannot see eye to eye with the people you work with, if you don't really enjoy it, then that uncomfort seems almost like it's killing you in a way. And that's the balance that I always try to strike, that if I don't end up enjoying working with people around me, then that's sometimes stress of work or pressure of targets or uncomfort of like creating a team or hitting targets will end up, I think, like just sucking you and draining you. And for me, I think there are two kinds of people mostly. People who are like, I think my grandma has this saying that like either people are like energy drainers or energy givers. And I think I'm very fortunate in like most of the organizations that I've worked with. I've really come across people who are like energy givers. So you grow because of them, because of the light and the positivity that they bring.
Yeah. That sounds so cool. Like I like your grandma's stuff as well. It's super cool.
Yes, age-old wisdom, right?
Yeah, it's really nice. Haresh, it's one more point, because you said you like food but you don't like cooking.
Yes.
How do you manage this? Like how do you like? Do you go out for restaurants all day then? What are you doing?
I think it's actually true. I think a lot of people get really surprised when I say that I don't like cooking. I think it's maybe a combination. I don't know how to cook well, and maybe that's why I don't like cooking. And obviously some people say that it's so therapeutic. It's like you can just get immersed and you can lose yourself. For me, I think I lose myself in like by doing yoga and biking and like playing competitive sport. So maybe I don't need one more thing to lose myself in. I think when it comes to actually food, I love food. Mostly it's like getting takeaways, to be very honest. But I avoid maybe delivery services because I want to go to a restaurant. I want to have that relationship with the person working over there. Because I think for me, I think the community that you build, not just at work, but also outside, I think is important. So yeah, I do rely on like a list of 15, 20 restaurants, let's say when I'm in Berlin, to regularly go there. I think the more or less they know me, they know my taste, the sort of, and I think this way, I think there are, maybe this is like made up a little bit, but I can control the ingredients that go in, right? Plus, when you cook, there's always like, you're not going to be able to use all the ingredients that you brought. So you're going to have some vegetables left, something left. And now tomorrow or day after, you're thinking what to do with it. Do you throw it away or do you make up something with this, right? Yeah. Whereas if you rely on a restaurant, then you never get into that. And think about COVID, 2.5 years of just like relying on restaurants. And this is going to sound really bad, but it's like a little way of like ensuring that those restaurants also continue to float, right?
Yeah, true.
Because if everyone is staying at home and cooking, it's like, they're going under.
Yeah, I also have friends like working in service and in the kitchen. Like I also have a background in hotels, so I know. We just hired Natasha, for example, in sales. She worked in restaurants for 18 years, and then in COVID times, she decided to work in SaaS sales. And I think that's what's happening a lot right now. That a lot of people working in this industry are actually changing their minds and felt like, okay, that's a high risk, right? So I need to do something else. And I think that's why a lot of people started working in sales. What's good for us, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's one more thing to it, which is if you know there are people who are going to be so much better than you at something, then rely on them, right? Like if you know that like there are going to be so many people who are going to be so much good at cooking, you can so easily rely on them.
That's true. Haresh, one more question before we end our episode today. It's like I always want people to get inspired by our guests, right? So I think what would be really helpful is to get recommendation from your side, especially maybe for younger people who just started their career. What would you tell them? Like, where should they put their focus to really have a great career? And can you recommend maybe 1 or 2 frameworks or books to them?
So the way, at least like I've so far, I think, lived my life is like you were saying as well. I think I quite resonate with that, which is let's not chase some other people's dreams. Because I think it's very difficult to figure out, I think, what you can be passionate about. People always say, go and chase your passions, right? And all of that. But early on, even right now, how do you know what your passions are, right? So the one thing that I've at least consciously do is, can I get into situations where I can have multiple options to play with? Like I'm an engineer, then I've done product management, I've done things on data. Now I'm doing international expansion and running commercial side of a business, right? So very different. And some of it, again, is down to like right place, right time, the dharma that I talk about. But it's also because the options were like, I kept some of them open. So I think one thing is that, is how do you consciously get into situations where you keep the options open? Now, obviously, this advice would not apply to people who go and become specialized in something, right? And if everyone kept their options open, no one would be a doctor, no one would be a lawyer, right? So obviously take it with a pinch of salt and pepper, I think. The other thing that I try to optimize for is, can I be in situations where I'm constantly learning a lot? And can I be curious about things happening around me? I think if those 2 things are there, then I think things happen. And obviously you have to play your part in terms of your own karma. You cannot like not give your 100% towards saying the hard work, the execution and all of that. Then I think over the last few years, I've gravitated a little bit towards, like I said, I think spirituality, yoga, like what sort of philosophies that I care about. I read and believe a lot on, I think, at least some of the thinking that comes from Stoicism in just like a good way of life. There's actually a book which is called Good Way of Life or Good Life, I think, or An Ancient Guide to the Good Life. That's a good book on Stoicism. But I think when it comes to maybe business books, I think I really like this book called Hard Things About Hard Things, which is written by Ben Horowitz. I think if you're in a startup or if you're building teams, I think it's a great book to read. The other book that I really enjoy reading, and I think I try to read it every few years, is called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah, no, this one.
And every few years I read it, I'm like, oh, like I never realized this is what it meant. So like I think it grows with you because I think it's a slightly difficult book to read, but it's more about like how different parts of your brain catch different aspects. So it's more on the psychology. So I think those are the kind of books that I like reading. Like, even though by function I'm a product manager, I hardly read product books or frameworks on product management. Like a lot of times when people are up and coming and want to read about sales or product management, they're like, hey, what book are you reading? I'm like, no, I'm not, because I think for me, my life is built a lot around my own experiences.
Yeah.
Which is to say what you were saying, like let's enjoy the moment, let's enjoy, and let's get into situations where we can like really enjoy the process. And for me, I think the biggest learning and the basic instincts are so much more intrinsic if they happen through your own experience. Like you have a much stronger intuition than maybe reading a book or watching a video and those sort of things. Again, not to say we should not. I think those things still accelerate. But I think your own experience is like so much more powerful.
That's true. 100% agree. Haresh, it was super nice to talk to you, and I think you could or you have inspired a lot of people with your recommendations here. Maybe one more last thing. Haresh is hiring, so if you liked the conversation here, reach out to him. I would put his LinkedIn profile here in the show notes. So I think as he said, we are growing a lot. So reach out to him, have a conversation with him as well. I think he will be happy about it.
100%. I think also, Dom, I think thank you so much for giving me the platform to come and speak with you, and hopefully I think inspire a few other people. I don't think I've done anything where I can truly say this is inspirational, but I think sometimes I think you'd like hear and learn some like ways of life, which I think could be like, okay, this is so obvious. Like everything I'm saying is so obvious, but sometimes it's like the obvious things which are eluding you. So I really appreciate you giving me the platform, and obviously come to talk to you and also talk to your the big fan following and viewers that you have.
Thank you very much, Haresh, and totally agree. I think the obvious stuff, it sometimes it just seems to be obvious for yourself, right? And it's not for others. So I think that's why it's important to talk and share it with others, so we can adjust their minds and give them feedback as well around these topics. 100%. Great talking to you, Haresh. Thank you very much. Likewise. And see you next week in the office.
See you next week, Dom. Take care. Bye.
Das war eine weitere Folge von Sales & Pepper Interviews. Wenn dir die Folge gefallen hat, freue ich mich über eine gute Bewertung von dir, und damit du keine Folge mehr in Zukunft verpasst, einfach den Podcast abonnieren. Alle Infos zur Folge und Links zu Büchern findest du in den Shownotes, und ich freue mich auf ein baldiges Wiedereinschalten von dir.